Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of the MEM1 Mosaic podcast. Today I'm super excited to introduce my own aunt, Cesca, who has very kindly agreed to come on and share about her decades-long journey with MS, multiple sclerosis, which is or can be a very, very debilitating autoimmune condition. When she comes on screen, you'll see that the trajectory her illness might have taken couldn't be further from what her reality is now. And I feel very inspired by her journey. So I've asked her on to share any golden nuggets or tips of wisdom that she has picked up along the way. So welcome, Cesca. It's absolutely lovely to have you on. My first question, which I ask to every guest, and in as much or as little detail as you want to share, what is a kind of picture of your journey so far with multiple sclerosis and with your health in general? Because I know that more recently you've been through a different facet, let's say, of that journey. But yeah, what is your story so far?
So I was diagnosed with MS in 2008. So that's 16 years ago, actually, when I was around 50 years old. Those maths don't work, but anyway, it was 2008. So I had it for 16 years. Yeah, I think that's right. I was diagnosed because I had various problems in terms of mobility. I had numb patches on my body. I was experiencing dizziness and nausea and balance issues. And I went to the doctor, and very quickly they diagnosed me with MS. At that point, I had several lesions on my brain and several lesions on my spine. So lesions are when in MS, the immune system attacks your own body. And in MS, it attacks the myelin sheath, which is which surrounds, the tube that the nerves run through. So it attacks that and it fuses together so that the messages can't get through. And that is where it fuses. It's shown on an MRI scan as a white patch, and it's a lesion. So I had several of those on my brain and several on my spine when I was diagnosed, which accounted for a lot of the things that I've been feeling for the previous probably 10 years, actually. I, obviously was quite a shock to have it, although my mother had it. So I was sort of au fait with MS. So what I was presented with, because MS is a disease, they don't know what causes it, and they don't know how to treat it. Or in fact, the only treatments are disease-modifying drugs. So to take a drug that will stop you having further attacks, slow down the progression of your disability, and I'll just make you better if you like, yeah. And there are a number of those drugs on the market, and they're introducing stem cell transplants as well. It seemed to work for some people, but not for others. So it's always the case that, in my opinion, is that they are stabbing in the dark and finding things that, oh, this seems to work, or that seems to work, which to me at the time when I was diagnosed wasn't good enough for me to go on those drugs. I hadn't, the two attacks that I had that I was diagnosed around that time were the worst ones I'd had. I mean, I didn't know before that I was having an attack. I just had strange feelings, loss of feeling, those sorts of things. But these were not nice at all, but they weren't disastrous. I could still walk, and, a lot of people can't. So I decided to take a more gentle approach and and I had time, and I looked at the alternative side of what people are doing with MS. And I found that there was loads out there. There were people who had not quite cured themselves. I don't think you can actually cure yourself of it, but who had really made their life very easy by doing alternative things. And those it comes from the search of looking at what were the things that were common to all the people who have MS. And in a nutshell, it is bad diet, stress, and sunshine, actually. So people at the equator don't have MS. Whereas in the north of Scotland and in the south of Australia, there are so many cases. So, there's something obviously. And so, anyway, other people have done all this research and said, well, therefore, do this, do that, do the other. And I found my own course, so which I followed. I followed the books and the podcasts and things. And I found myself a functional medicine doctor, the one that you consult, Lizzie. And he was fantastic for me, because what he was doing was looking at, he said, your body's very finely tuned. Everyone's body's finely tuned, but mine, because I have MS, is more finely tuned and needs to be more carefully tuned, if you like, more carefully looked after. So what he did was look at all the different parts of my body, what was happening to the hormones, to the cholesterol, to every single part. And he would say, you've got too much of this, too little of that. So basically, it were dietary changes. So I was eating a lot of dairy at the time, and gluten, so bread and cheese, wonderful. I had to come off all gluten products and all dairy. And I tried to de-stress my life. Not easy when I had 3 young children, but I probably didn't follow that. I didn't follow that enough, actually. It will be one of the things when you come to ask me what I would do again. But generally, I just followed the information that's out there. There was just so much. I mean, and not a single neurologist ever pointed me in that direction, because that's not what they do. So every time I said, well, look, I'm doing this, I'm doing it with my diet, and they say, oh, there's no evidence that that works, you're wasting your time. But they did always say, actually, but if I were you, I wouldn't stop what you're doing, because I've had no new disease activity since 2008. So 16 years of that. So they know there's a reason for that, and I mean, I firmly believe it's because I changed my diet, and there were all sorts of other side effects of that as well. And I'm pretty healthy. I have a little bit of disability from the lesions that were there before, because all that damage was done before I was diagnosed. So I get in summary, my symptoms are I get dizzy sometimes, my balance isn't good, I get muscle fatigue, I get chronic fatigue sometimes, but nothing that I can't manage. And if I have one of these dizzy spells, well, that's the most common thing for me, then I just know I have to take it easy for a couple of days, which I do. And then I'm back up running again. Sometimes it might take 2 weeks, sometimes it might take a day, but I just have to listen to my body. The big thing is listen to my body and do and don't do what it's telling me.
There's so much gold in what you've just said. I don't even know where to start, but I wanted to come back to something you mentioned around, taking your own approach, and then obviously having the realizations that you did, the results that you got back from whether it was the functional medicine, whatever it might have been, the diet changes, de-stressing, all of that, at the same time as consulting a neurologist who was saying, well, there's no evidence for it, so don't waste your time. But you and I both know, Cesca, that they give you a little nudge, wink, wink to say, actually, well done, and if it's working, carry on.
Yeah.
In a world where there's so much information, and in the health sphere now where it's almost like every other person is becoming a health expert, how do you know who to listen to and what to trust? And is there ever a time where you start something and you think, oh, this wasn't the right decision? How do you know what to follow?
Well, that's incredibly difficult to know what to follow, because as I say, there are so many things out there. And actually, you can get caught up and try something. Oh, perhaps I'm not doing enough. I ought to do that or the other. And I mean, I could spend my whole time, all day, every day, researching and doing things and therapies and exercise and everything to help in order to help my MS. And I'm sure if I did more of all those things, it would be helpful. But I mean, I think you have to live your life as well. And so you have to somewhere just find a balance and say, well, I think I'm doing enough. And yeah, let that thought, well, you could do this, you could do more, you could do more. Okay, let that be there, because then if you have time, you can go and have a look at it and do more. But I mean, I'm not doing enough of the things that I'm doing. So my aim is just, to do a little bit more of what I'm doing, a little bit more exercise, perhaps a little bit, fine tuning my diet more, making sure I get all that multitude of things into my gut, into my microbiome, which I believe is the root cause, one of the big causes of MS. So I hope if that answers your question.
It does indeed, and brings me very nicely on to the next one, which, I mean, as you said, it's very difficult to know what to follow, and it really resonated when you said, "Oh, I could spend my whole day, in and out of therapies and appointments and seeing different practitioners or doing exercises or whatever, and but I also want to have, a life as well." Do you feel as though, is there any part of you that's ever felt bitter or resentful, or that you've lost out on a life you could have had, or do you feel that you have come to accept and perhaps not just accept, but make something amazing, out of what you've experienced? Where do you sort of sit on that kind of, oh well, the grass could have been greener on another side if I'd had the option to get there, type of thing?
Well, I'm very pragmatic about those sorts of things. I've got it. I don't know why I got it. Well, I can take a guess at it because of the things I know about it. But no, it just happened to me. And I'm sorry, you're still there, yes. No, I mean, I just deal with it. No, I mean, if I had another life, well, there'd be something else in that life. I've got this. This is what I'm dealing with, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. I mean, in lots of ways, well, that it's a slightly different point, but it explained a lot of these sort of illnesses and the way I've been feeling before I was diagnosed. It was like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. And it was almost a relief to know that there was something there. I mean, not a relief to have MS, but yeah, I'm pragmatic about it, totally.
It's definitely a really useful skill to have in the moment when it can be emotionally just overwhelming, like exhausting, and a bit of a mind spin, because there's so much that's unknown, and
Yeah.
I do believe the human brain will grasp to know whatever it can. So there's that like disjunct between, okay, there's something wrong, but I don't quite know what's wrong, and having to, to walk that path yourself, which you have done. And it's, I mean, one of my questions was going to be, I imagine you were, when you were first diagnosed, given a multitude of different scenarios of what an MEM1, what an MS prognosis.
Yeah.
Freudian slip there.
Yeah.
What an MS prognosis might look like for you, based on, what it had looked like for other people. And I was chatting to Matt Rowe the other day, obviously, who you put me in touch with, who's had his own journey with MS. And he said to me, I was given a year before being, told I'd be in a wheelchair with absolutely very little to no movement whatsoever. Would you, at that point of your diagnosis, would you see yourself, with all the fears that you had at that time, would you see yourself the way you are now, which is, from my point of view anyway, when I get to see you, active, you have a social life, you know, you've got an amazing family life, you've got your hobbies, you've got your work. Like, would you have seen that as possible? Or do you think it was like at the time it was just complete fear mode?
Yeah, I mean, well, from what I said before, it sounds like I just, breezed through it and went, oh, that's what I've got, let's get on. It wasn't like that. It was very frightening at the time. You really don't know what's going to happen. They can't predict anything because every single case is different. So they look at what's happened so far. So I was told that I probably wouldn't be in a wheelchair, but they did say, but the next attack could put you in a wheelchair. We just don't know. So I had a lot of fear at the beginning. Yes, I felt very helpless because I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know what to do, etc. But once I found those answers, once I found that there was another way, that's when it was like taking control of it. It didn't have control of me. Well, it did, obviously, but I was trying to turn it around, and I felt more in control of it. I was very lucky. I met someone, a friend put me in touch with someone who had MS and who'd been bad, who hadn't been able to walk, and who'd made herself better by exactly the route that I'm saying, the diet, etc., etc. And she was such an inspiration to me. So that was an amazing, piece of luck, whatever. This friend introduced me to her, and I thought, she's my role model. She can do it. I remember when I met her, she came skipping along the road, and I thought, oh my God, if I can skip along the road, she was about 10 years older than me, in 10 years, oh my God, that would be amazing. So, I'm very lucky to have that. So then I focused on her, what she'd been doing, and then found out about all these other things. So, really, God, that was just such an important thing for me, finding a person who was able to say, someone like Matt Rose, if you already said, he wasn't available to me then. Maybe we didn't have computers then, we did, but but it was very different. So yeah, I didn't know. Initially, I didn't know. Probably 6 months, and I felt really bad for 6 months. I couldn't really do anything. Couldn't go out. I couldn't really think straight. Affected my brain fog, all sorts of things. But once I started to feel better and started on this pattern of finding out what I could do, then transformation took place, and I got better and better and felt stronger and stronger, more in control. And then as time went by and I could see the benefits, and then I'd have MRI scans, they'd say, nope, no new disease activity. I go, oh, God, that's fantastic, and then 16 years on, still none. So yeah, so I had to answer your question, I had a fear probably 6 months or so, a real fear, maybe 3 to 6 months. But once I saw that there was a way to go, I mean, it might not have worked for me, of course, but once I saw there was a way to go, and I was willing to try it, and I did go down that path, and then I saw the results, then great. But it's really hard for anybody being diagnosed, having a diagnosis like that, like yours, like mine, very hard. And I wish they had access to people like I had access to this lovely woman.
Well, in a way, the fact that you're on here, speaking, I hope listeners are going to resonate with some part of your journey, whether or not they have MS, because your diagnosis is MS, mine is MEM1, but there isn't a single part of what you've told me so far during this episode that I haven't been able to relate to. Okay, yes, the physical symptoms are different, but 99.9% of what you've said, I've thought, yeah, that's me too, or I've had that same thing. So I'm grateful that you've come on and you've shared, and believe me, because I've done this podcast for a little while now, you will be someone's beacon of light, just as that person was for you. So
No, that'd be
it's an amazing thing.
well, very happy to be. If anyone wanted to contact me at all, then I'm so happy to. I'm so keen to help other people. I really, really am. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And for anyone listening back, I'll put Cesca's contact details of some sort in the show notes below. And I can say, because I know her very well, she's fantastic. Cesca, before we wrap up, have one more question for you, because I've already taken more than enough time, or more time than I said I was going to.
That's right.
And you sort of started answering it before.
Yeah.
If you could go back to yourself at any point of your journey, it could be diagnosis, it could be 6 months ago, and give yourself one piece of advice, or do something differently, or whatever whatever it might be. Some people like to say, I wouldn't do anything differently, because I like, I appreciate where I am now. But if there's one thing where you look back and you think, oh, I could give myself this piece of advice, or I could give someone else this piece of advice, or I would do this differently, or I'd change this, what would it be?
Well, it would be pre-diagnosis, and it would be looking back to and realizing that I had I'd say a sort of poor constitution, if you like. I was always ill. I was always had tonsillitis, sinusitis, cystitis. I obviously had a bad immune system, and I was obviously eating the wrong things, because the food that I was eating was inflaming my immune system, so it was making everything worse. I know that now, but so what I wish I'd done is, but would I've had the access to it? What I wish is that I'd had access to the type of information that we've got now, Lizzie, which would say to you, if I had someone say to me, by the way, there's a reason why you're always ill and always tired, and there's a reason. Why don't you look into it? Why didn't you consult somebody in functional medicine, or do some tests or whatever? Because I would have found out a long time ago that I was putting the wrong things in my body. I was doing the wrong thing for me. And therefore, the MS might never have come on. So that's sort of that's pre-diagnosis. It does it, but I mean, I don't know. Since diagnosis, I think I probably should have got onto it sooner. I mean, I got onto it quite soon, but I was frightened, and there was no proof, and it was all difficult, a difficult decision to make. But that's why I'm really happy to help anyone who sort of newly diagnosed. I say, right, get onto this now, read it for yourself. But here's all the information. It's there for you. Do something about it. So that would be the one thing I'd have done differently, if that had existed when I was young, when I was 20 and having all these different things on, glandular fever and all these things. So
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Cesca, and I hope that, as I say, anyone listening back is able to find at least one thing that they can take away and apply to their own journey. And I know myself, I've known you for all 26 years of my life so far, and I'm still learning things from your journey, and feel very inspired. And thank you again for coming on, and I very much look forward to keeping up with your journey, and all the best with your health.
Yeah, thank you very much. And ask me again if you want to.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica.
A pleasure. I hope it helps somebody.
Thank you.